Okay, so for this deep dive, we're starting with something, well, pretty startling. Marilyn Monroe,
Hmm?
global icon, right? And an exorcism. It's a claim that just makes you stop and think, how on earth do Hollywood glamour and, ancient exorcism rites even connect?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And the sources we're digging into today are quite a mix. We've got historical church records, some really personal biographical notes on Monroe, and then broader discussions on exorcism itself. So our goal here is to kind of unpack all these threads for you, try to sort through the different interpretations, historical versus modern, and highlight some really, really surprising details we found.
Yeah, because the sources point to a specific event, supposedly. Marilyn Monroe's exorcism in 1961, apparently at St. Francis of Assisi Church in North Adams, Massachusetts. This was like right after she'd been briefly hospitalized. And the details. The ritual reportedly had no obstacles, lasted little more than 3 hours. It's strangely specific.
It is. And the case files, they add another layer. They mention rumblings emanating beneath the stone foundation of the church when the demon was cast out. But interestingly, they also note these rumblings didn't shake the building any harder than other manifestations they'd apparently recorded before, which connects to the church's own history. St. Francis of Assisi was the oldest church in the diocese, and apparently it needed frequent reparations to the stonework throughout the 19th and 20th century. And get this, the reason given was demonic rumblings from previously banished demons.
Seriously, the church itself had a history tied to demonic rumbling.
That's what the sources claim. And it gets even wilder. They believe the same demon was cast out of that church 3 times. First in 1892, then 1961, which would be the alleged Monroe incident, and again in 1973.
The same one. Wow.
Yeah. There's even supposed to be an audio recording from that 73 exorcism of the same demon, apparently speaking through a woman around Marilyn's age. The sources describe it as one voice, albeit simultaneously, like a trick, an underworld trick. It's this whole narrative weaving together the demon, the building's decay, its resilience. It shows how supernatural beliefs can get embedded in a place, right, across generations.
That's incredible context for the whole alleged Marilyn event. The church itself sounds like a character in this story. So, St. Francis of Assisi, tell us more about the building. It was a major Catholic church for, what, over 125 years?
That's right. Served the community, oldest Catholic building in North Adams for a while. Its roots go back to Irish immigrant families in the early 1800s. The first Mass wasn't even in a church, but in someone's home, Michael Ryan's home.
And the actual building?
Well, the land was bought around 1862. Cornerstone laid in 67, finished up in 1869. It was pretty impressive, apparently. Steeple nearly 170 feet high. It was even on the National Register of Historic Places. Back then, North Adams had 5 Catholic churches, and St. Francis was known as the Irish one.
So what happened to it? You said it's gone now.
Yeah, it faced a decline. Fewer Catholics in the area meant parish consolidation by 2009. Even earlier, by 2007, they realized essential repairs would cost over $1 million, money they just didn't have. So it closed its doors in 2008. Then the steeple started becoming dangerous, actually beginning to collapse by 2016.
Oh, wow. So demolition was the only option.
Pretty much. It took nearly 6 months to take it down, and now the property's just empty. They did save the cross and the bells, though. The cross went to the local historical society, and the parish kept the bells, maybe for future use. But yet the physical place where all this history, these stories unfolded, it's just gone. Kind of eerie.
It really is. So this whole story, the church, Marilyn, it brings us back to exorcism itself. You mentioned the term comes from Greek, exorkizing, to bind by oath. But how is it actually practiced? Is it the same everywhere?
Not at all. It varies quite a bit across traditions. In Christianity, it goes back to the Bible, Jesus casting out demons. The Catholic Church has very strict regulations for what they call major exorcism. Has to be an ordained priest. And crucially, they have to rule out psychological or physical illness first. That's step 1.
Okay, so it's not just jumping straight to demons.
Right. The process itself involves prayers, holy water, maybe relics, calling on God, Jesus, the saints. And that's not always quick. Sources say it can take multiple weekly sessions over several years. And confirmed possessions are considered really rare. Like one exorcist estimated maybe 1 out of every 5,000 cases they look into. They also talk about other things like infestation of demon in a place, not a person, or vexation physical attacks, and obsession mental attacks.
Interesting distinctions. What about other faiths?
Well, the Eastern Orthodox Church trains all its priests in exorcism, often used during baptism using specific prayers. Lutheran churches have minor exorcisms in baptism too, but also stress consulting a physician for anything major. In Hinduism, you might see mantras, fire rituals called yashnas, prayers to Lord Hanuman. And in Islam, a common practice involves reading the last 3 chapters, or surahs, from the Quran. So lots of different approaches.
Okay, so it's this ancient, varied practice, but what's really striking is the recent surge in demand. Like Father James LaBarre talking about a large explosion since 1990, going from basically 0 cases to managing 300 just 10 years later, and the number of official exorcist priests in the U.S. more than quadrupling, from 12 in 2005 to 50 by 2016, and now maybe 125 to 150. That's a huge jump. What do the sources say is driving this?
It's a really interesting question, and there isn't one single answer. Several theories pop up in the material. One idea is, well, popular culture. More movies, TV shows about the supernatural. Maybe it leads people to think they need an exorcism when they don't. Another big factor discussed is the decline of traditional religious institutions. The idea is that as people move away from established churches, they sometimes look for substitute belief systems, things involving the occult, spirits, energy work.
And some exorcists think that opens the door to darker influences?
Exactly. That's a view held by some that dabbling in alternative spiritualities can make someone vulnerable. Other factors mentioned are broader societal anxieties like violence, the practice of abortion, drug cartel crimes, and even something called the Pentecostalization of Christianity, especially in the Global South, which emphasizes direct spiritual experiences, including battling evil forces.
How has the Vatican responded to this rising demand?
They've definitely taken notice. They've offered courses for priests, and they updated the official rite in 1999, apparently using more sober language, giving priests a bit greater flexibility. But they're also cautious. There are documents like one called Ab Aliquot Annis from Cardinal Ratzinger back when he was head of that office, really emphasizing the strict requirements for priests doing exorcisms and warning against people doing it without authorization. So while some might say it's more demons, the sources suggest a complex mix of cultural, social, and maybe spiritual factors are behind the increase.
Okay, so that's the broader context. Let's circle back to Marilyn Monroe herself. Because putting aside the exorcism claim for a moment, the accepted story is one of depth psychological struggle, right? Her difficult upbringing, foster homes, her own journals talk about sadness, isolation, low self-esteem, feeling lost, a constant uneasiness.
Absolutely. And that psychological perspective is crucial. There was even a 2023 psychological autopsy, basically, a study looking back at her life through biographies, films. It suggested a trajectory originating from an autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and culminating in bipolar disorder, BD, with unspecified catatonia.
Catatonia, like becoming unresponsive.
Yeah, severe behavioral disruption, maybe not moving, resisting instructions, even mutism. It's serious. The study linked her psychological traumas to developing borderline personality disorder, BPD, and bipolar disorder, BD. And, thinking historically, back in the Middle Ages, demonic possession was often the explanation for what we now call severe mental illness. Later, they made distinctions like demonic obsession for external attacks, which sometimes meant more compassionate treatment for the mentally ill. Today, science points to psychological and biological factors. But for some, that spiritual dimension, that belief still exists. It's less about dismissing the past, maybe, and more about understanding the framework they used back then to explain these very real human struggles.
And that makes sorting this out incredibly difficult because the symptoms, they can overlap, can't they? The sources list symptoms that could point to either severe mental illness or what some might interpret as demonic influence. It makes you think.
Exactly. The overlap is where it gets really complex. Let's run through some examples from the sources. Hallucinations and delusions. Thinking you have supernatural knowledge, could be psychosis, could be seen as a demonic possession delusion. Unusual behavior, things ranging from childlike actions to agitation, very broad. Motor issues catatonia. I mentioned catatonia, decreased activity, negativism, rigid posture, mutism, seen in depression, schizophrenia, and alleged possessions.
What about speech?
Yeah, speech issues. Speaking in foreign languages unknown to the individual. That's a classic possession claim. But also loss of speech or hearing or just disorganized thinking and speech, which points to mental disorders. Physical stuff, seizures, sudden vomiting. Can have medical causes, but also appear in possession accounts. Mood, intense depression, hopelessness, extreme unrest. Mood swings, and hedonia, losing pleasure in things, common in both contexts. And even appearance. Sometimes accounts mention a deterioration of appearance. Historically, you had concepts like jinni used to explain mental illness in some cultures. And even today, the sources mention places like the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, where demonic possession is still considered a primary reason for mental illnesses. Standard modern psychiatry generally views these symptoms as forms of psychotic disturbance. This overlap, it really forces you to consider how we label and understand profound human distress, doesn't it? Different lenses on possibly the same experiences.
Absolutely. So, beyond the alleged 1961 exorcism, there are even more specific, maybe sensational claims about Marilyn and demons. We often talk about her demons metaphorically, trauma, addiction, but some sources push a literal interpretation, like a demon actually took her over, made her voice shrill and nasty, made her scream.
Yeah, those claims are out there. Some sources assert Monroe was completely aware she was possessed, that she told a reporter others resided and lived inside of her, described it as Jekyll and Hyde, feeling like so many people. It shocked her.
That's intense.
It is. And her psychic, Kenny Kingston. He reportedly used a white light of protection technique, something used in occult practices because he supposedly knew Monroe was being tormented by demons. There's this belief woven through some sources that her alleged spiritual contacts in the occult and any success she had from them ultimately haunted her, leading to those psychiatric hospitalizations.
Wow. And wasn't there something even stranger about someone else being inhabited by her demon?
Ah, yes. The account from Robin Harfouche is quite something. She described an entity first identifying itself as Marilyn, acting like a spirit guide, even claiming to be Monroe's former manager. But then, Harfouche said she saw its true form a huge creature, like a horror movie monster. And the claim was that a demon from Marilyn Monroe later inhabited Robin. This supposedly allowed Robin to know things about Marilyn that she otherwise would not have known.
Yeah.
And this whole bizarre phenomenon was presented as an explanation for reincarnation.
That is deeply strange, like something out of fiction.
It really pushes the boundaries of belief, doesn't it? It shows how these narratives can twist and evolve in really unexpected ways.
So wrapping this up, what a journey. From an alleged exorcism involving a Hollywood icon to the deep history of a specific church to the nature of exorcism itself and this complex tangle with mental health. The sources really gave us a lot to think about. Spiritual explanations, psychological analyses, all side by side.
Definitely. And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. How do we navigate that tension? The tension between these deeply held historical or spiritual beliefs and our modern scientific understanding, especially when we encounter things that just don't fit neatly into either box. What does this whole exploration tell us about our ongoing human quest for meaning, whether we look for it in the physical world or, in the unseen? And how much do our interpretations really shape everything we think we know?